The text message arrived while I was wrapping my daughter's only Christmas present. A secondhand doll ID found at Goodwill. You're not invited to Christmas, we need space from your failures. 23 words that finally said out loud what my family had been thinking for years. I stared at Mom's message, the words blurring as my phone's screen dimmed. Outside my studio apartment, Denver's first snow was falling, covering the trash bins and broken fence with something that almost looked like hope. But inside, everything felt exactly as ugly as it had always been. My daughter, Emma, looked up from her coloring book. Mommy, are we going to Grandma's house with the big tree? No, baby, I said, forcing my voice steady. We're having our own Christmas this year. She went back to coloring, humming Jingle Bells off key. 6 years old and already better at handling disappointment than I'd ever be. That's what happens when disappointment is all you've ever known. I read Mom's text again, each word carefully chosen for maximum impact. Failures. Plural. As if my entire existence could be reduced to a series of mistakes. The unemployed daughter, the single mother, the college dropout. The one who got pregnant at 19 and ruined her potential. My phone buzzed again. Probably Mom adding more conditions to my exile, but the number was unfamiliar. Miss Foster, this is Martin Caldwell from Caldwell and Associates. I'm calling regarding your grandmother Eleanor Foster's estate. The will reading is tomorrow at 2 p.m. Your attendance is mandatory. I almost laughed. I think you have the wrong person. My grandmother died 3 months ago. The will was already read. There was a pause. No. Miss Foster, that was a preliminary distribution. Mrs. Eleanor Foster amended her will shortly before her passing. The reading tomorrow concerns her primary estate. By law, all beneficiaries must be present. But I wasn't. I stopped. I hadn't been invited to the first reading. Mom had made sure of that. The address is 1500 Wingcoop Street, Suite 400. Please bring identification. And Ms. Foster, your grandmother was very specific about your attendance. After he hung up, I sat in the silence of my apartment, listening to Emma's humming and the radiator's death rattle. Grandma Eleanor, the only person in my family who never looked at me like I was something broken that needed fixing or hiding. I pulled out my laptop and searched for Caldwell and Associates. Downtown Denver. High-rise building. The kind of law firm that had marble lobbies and charged more per hour than I made in a month at the diner before they cut my shifts. Something wasn't right. The first will reading had been at Mom's house. I knew because my sister Stephanie had posted about it on Instagram. Blessed to carry on Grandma's legacy, with a photo of her wearing Grandma's pearl necklace. The one Grandma had promised me when I was 7 before I became the family disappointment. My phone rang. Mom, I know that lawyer called you, she said without preamble. Don't get any ideas. Tomorrow's reading is just a formality. Some tax nonsense. Then why wasn't I invited to the first reading? You know why. Her voice was crisp, efficient, the same tone she used when firing housekeepers. You've made your choices, Jessica, dropping out of Columbia, having a child with that man who wouldn't even marry you, working at that terrible diner. I work at a marketing firm now, I said quietly. I have been for 8 months, part-time. She dismissed, barely above minimum wage, while Stephanie just made partner at her firm. And your brother Cameron is chief of surgery at Presbyterian. You understand why we need distance. It's Christmas. Exactly, and we'd like to enjoy it without the constant reminder of wasted potential. That lawyer will probably just give you some trinket. Eleanor left. Take it and be grateful. She hung up. I looked at Emma, still coloring, tongue poking out in concentration. She was drawing our Christmas tree, a tragic Charlie Brown branch. ID found behind the grocery store, and decorated with paper snowflakes. Mommy, she said without looking up. Why doesn't Grandma like us? The question I'd been dreading since she was old enough to notice. Sometimes families are complicated, baby. Is it because we're poor? We're not poor. We're just careful with money. She nodded solemnly, then added another ornament to her drawing. I think our tree is prettier than Grandma's anyway. Hers doesn't have any love on it. Out of the mouths of babes. That night, I lay awake thinking about Grandma Eleanor. She'd been the only one who visited after Emma was born. While Mom was too busy and Dad was traveling for business, code for avoiding the scandal. Grandma had shown up with a hand-wear-upon blanket and a check I'd tried to refuse. Pride is expensive, she'd said, and you can't afford it right now. She'd been right. That check had kept us housed when Trevor disappeared, leaving nothing but empty promises and a note saying he wasn't ready for this. The last time I saw Grandma was 3 months before she died. She'd insisted on taking me to lunch at the Brown Palace, Denver's fanciest hotel. I'd felt like a fraud in my Target dress, while she sat there in her St. John suit, looking like the old money she was. Your mother's wrong about you, she'd said over afternoon tea. Mom's successful, Stephanie's successful, Cameron's successful. They're not wrong. Success, Grandma had said, stirring her Earl Grey. is a word people use when they're afraid to say happiness. She'd looked at me then with those sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. Tell me, darling, is your mother happy? Is Stephanie? Is Cameron? I hadn't answered because we both knew the truth. Mom was on her third marriage and fourth therapist. Stephanie took Xanax like vitamins and hadn't smiled genuinely in years. Cameron was going through a divorce that was costing him everything, including his kids. You have something they don't, Grandma had continued. You have that little girl who looks at you like you hung the moon. You have resilience they can't even imagine, and you have my respect, which is worth more than they know. She died 2 weeks later, heart attack at her desk, working on something her secretary wouldn't discuss. Mom had handled everything: funeral, estate, arrangements. I'd been allowed to attend the service but not the reception, for everyone's comfort. Mom had explained. Now, sitting in my cold apartment, I wondered what Grandma had been working on. What had she changed? 3 months ago, the next morning, I dropped Emma at school and took 3 buses to downtown Denver. The building at 1500 Wingcoop was all glass and steel, reaching toward a gray December sky. I dressed in my only suit, the one I bought for job interviews with the last of my savings. The elevator to the 4th floor was silent except for instrumental Christmas music. When the doors opened, I stepped into a reception area that screamed old money. Original art on the walls. Fresh orchids on every surface. The kind of quiet that only comes with serious wealth. Jessica Foster, I told the receptionist. She smiled. They're waiting for you in conference room A. Waiting for me? I walked down a hallway lined with partner portraits, my cheap heels clicking on marble. Through the glass door of conference room A, I could see them. Mom in her Chanel suit, looking like she'd swallowed something bitter. Stephanie with her perfect blowout and designer bag worth more than my car. Cameron in his scrubs, probably coming straight from surgery to make a point about how busy and important he was. And at the head of the table, a man in his 70s with silver hair and kind eyes. Martin Caldwell, I assumed. I opened the door. What is she doing here? Mom stood so fast her chair rolled backward. Sit down, Patricia, Mr. Caldwell said calmly. Ms. Foster has every right to be here. More than anyone, actually. This is a family matter, Stephanie said, not looking at me. Yes, Mr. Caldwell agreed. Which is why Jessica is here. I took the only empty chair across from my family. The table between us felt like an ocean. Mr. Caldwell opened a leather folder. Before we begin, I need to verify something, Jessica. Did you receive any communication about the previous will reading 3 months ago? No. He made a note. Were you informed of your grandmother's passing by your family? I glanced at Mom. I saw it on Facebook. Another note. He looked disgusted. Let's get on with it, Cameron said, checking his phone. I have surgery in an hour. Of course, Mr. Caldwell pulled out a document. This is the last will and testament of Eleanor Marie Foster, executed 3 months before her passing. It supersedes all previous wills. Mom relaxed slightly. Of course, there had been another will. She'd probably convinced Grandma to cut me out entirely. Before I read the specific bequests, Mr. Caldwell continued. I should explain that Mrs. Foster came to me with very specific concerns about her estate. She had discovered some irregularities in how her previous attorney had handled things. What? Irregularities? Mom's voice was sharp. We'll get to that. First, the bequests to Patricia Foster Williams, my daughter. I leave the sum of $1. The room went silent. To Stephanie Foster and Cameron Foster, my grandchildren. I leave the sum of $1 each. This is insane. Mom was on her feet again. Mother wasn't. In her right mind, will contest. Please let me finish, Mr. Caldwell said firmly. To my granddaughter, Jessica Foster, I leave the remainder of my estate, including all properties, investments, and holdings, with an estimated value of $47 million. The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. No, Mom's voice was barely a whisper. That's not possible. The house in Aspen, the ranch in Montana, the investment portfolio, Mother promised. Your mother discovered something 3 months ago, Mr. Caldwell interrupted. Something that changed everything. Would you like me to continue reading? Or would you prefer to discuss this privately? Continue, I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. He pulled out another paper. Jessica, your grandmother hired a private investigator after some discrepancies in family stories came to light. What he found was illuminating. He looked at my mother with something like contempt. Patricia, would you like to explain why you told your mother that Jessica had a drug problem? Or why you claimed she'd stolen money from the family business? I have the emails, he said simply, also the forged treatment center documents, and the fake police reports. You systematically poisoned your mother against your own daughter for years, all while siphoning money from her accounts. That's a lie. I have bank records, over $2 million over 5 years, transferred to accounts you thought couldn't be traced. But Eleanor was smarter than you gave her credit for. Stephanie had gone pale. Cameron was staring at Mom like he'd never seen her before. Furthermore, Mr. Caldwell continued, you convinced Eleanor's previous attorney to exclude Jessica from all family trust documents. That attorney has since been disbarred for other ethical violations, but the damage was done. He turned to me. Your grandmother spent her last months trying to undo what had been done. She wanted you to know that she never believed the lies, but by the time she learned the truth, you'd already been pushed so far away she didn't know how to reach you, so she changed her will. I said softly. She did more than that. He pulled out a letter. She asked me to give you this. My hands shook as I opened it. Grandma's handwriting, still elegant even in her final days. My dearest Jessica, by the time you read this, you'll know what I've done. It's not enough. Nothing could be enough to make up for the years I let them convince me you were someone you weren't. I see now what I was too blind to see before, while they performed success for my approval. You were actually living it, raising a wonderful child alone, building a career from nothing. Surviving betrayals that would have broken the others. Your mother told me you were an addict. The investigator found you were working 3 jobs to pay for night school. She said you stole from the company. You were actually the only one who didn't. She painted you as a failure while stealing millions and destroying everything she touched. The money is yours. But more than that, I want you to know this. You were never a disappointment. You were the only one who inherited my strength instead of my weakness. The only one who chose love over appearance, truth over comfort, struggle over surrender. Take care of that beautiful little girl. Teach her what I should have taught your mother, that worth isn't measured in dollars or degrees, but in the courage to remain kind when the world is cruel. All my love, Grandma Eleanor. P.S. The house in Cherry Hills has a playroom I think Emma would love. The pink Victorian dollhouse is already there waiting. I couldn't see through the tears. $47 million houses. Investments. But all I could think about was that dollhouse. Grandma had remembered from when I was 7, and she'd promised to buy me one just like hers before everything went wrong. This is fraud. Mom's voice cracked through my memories. She manipulated Mother. We'll sue. You'll do nothing, Mr. Caldwell said coldly. Any legal challenge will trigger the release of all evidence. To the district attorney, the statute of limitations hasn't run out on your embezzlement. Your choice, accept your dollar quietly or face criminal charges. You can't threaten us, Cameron said, but his voice lacked conviction. I'm not threatening. I'm stating facts. Your grandmother was very thorough. She documented everything. He pulled out a thick folder. Tax fraud, embezzlement, elder abuse, identity theft. Should I continue? The room fell silent. I want them out, I said quietly. Everyone looked at me. I want them to leave now. You can't just, Stephanie started. I cannot and I am. I stood, finding strength I didn't know I had. You exiled me for having a baby, for being poor, for embarrassing you. You told me I was a failure so many times I believed it. I looked at each of them. But Grandma was right. I'm not the failure. I'm the only one who succeeded at the one thing that matters, being a decent human being. Jessica, Mom's voice was different now, desperate. We're family. No, I said. Family doesn't lie. Family doesn't steal. Family doesn't abandon a 19-year-old with a baby because it looks bad at the country club. Think about what you're doing, Cameron said. That money, we could share it, work something out. Like you shared with me? Like you worked things out when I was sleeping in my car with a newborn. Because none of you would even answer my calls. Stephanie was crying now. Perfect makeup running down her perfect face. Jessie, please, I have kids, expenses, so do I. The difference is I figured out how to take care of mine without stealing from an old woman. Murdoch Caldwell cleared his throat. Perhaps we should give Jessica some time to. No, I said. We're done. They can take their dollars and leave. And if any of them contact me again, I want those files sent to the DA. Mom stood slowly, aged 10 years in 10 minutes. You'll regret this. The only thing I regret, I said, is spending so many years believing I was what you said I was. They filed out one by one. Mom with her chin up, still pretending she had dignity left. Stephanie sobbing into her phone. Cameron muttering about lawyers and loopholes. When they were gone, I sank back into my chair. Are you all right, mister? Caldwell asked gently. I don't know. It was honest. This morning I was worried about buying Emma a real Christmas present now. Now you can buy her anything she wants. She wants a family, I said. A real one. Not whatever that was. He smiled. In my experience, families are made, not born. Your grandmother knew that. It's why she made sure you'd have the resources to build your own. $47 million, I said, testing the words. I don't even know what to do with that. Start small. The house in Cherry Hills is ready for immediate occupancy. The property taxes are paid through next year. After that, he shrugged. You'll figure it out. Your grandmother had faith in you. After meeting you, I can see why. He handed me a set of keys and a portfolio. My office will handle the transfers. It will take a few weeks to sort everything out. But there's an immediate fund available for expenses, $500,000 to start. I laughed. Actually laughed. To start? Your grandmother wanted to make sure you and Emma had a proper Christmas, the one she couldn't give you herself. I thought about our pathetic tree, our tiny apartment, the secondhand doll that would be Emma's only present. Mr. Caldwell, that house in Cherry Hills, is it decorated for Christmas? He smiled. Your grandmother had it professionally decorated last month. She was optimistic about the outcome of all this. There's even a 12-foot tree in the main room, and I believe she mentioned something about having the dollhouse moved to the front window where a little girl could see it first thing. This time the tears were different, not grief or anger or hurt, but something cleaner. Like snow covering all the ugly things, making them beautiful. Thank you, I said. Don't thank me. Thank Eleanor Foster. She saw who you really were, even when everyone tried to hide it. Even when you tried to hide it from yourself. I left the office building different than I'd entered. Not because of the money, though that was surreal enough, but because for the first time in my life, someone had chosen me. Not tolerated me. Not overlooked me. Chosen me. The text came while I was on the bus back to Emma's school. Mom, again, you'll be alone forever. No one will want you for anything but that money. I deleted it without responding. Then I blocked her number. Stephanie's. Cameron's. All of them. When I picked Emma up from school, she ran to me with a paper snowman clutched in her hand. For our tree, she announced. Actually, baby, I said, kneeling to her level, how would you like to see a new tree? A really big one. Her eyes went wide, like Grandma Patricia's. Better, I promised. This one has love on it. We drove to Cherry Hills in my beat-up Honda. Emma chattering about her day. The house was at the end of a tree-lined street. A gorgeous Tudor revival with diamond pane windows glowing warm in the afternoon light. And there, in the front window, was the dollhouse. Pink and perfect and waiting. Emma saw it and gasped. Mommy, look. It's like a fairy tale house. It is, baby. And it's ours, ours, ours. We walked up the pathway lined with tiny white lights. I unlocked the door with shaking hands. Inside, the house smelled like cinnamon and pine. The Christmas tree stood in the living room, so tall Emma had to crane her neck to see the star on top. Presents were already underneath, dozens of them. All tagged for Emma in Grandma's handwriting. Mommy, Emma whispered, is this heaven? No. Baby, it's home. She ran to the tree while I stood in the doorway, taking it all in. The house Grandma had prepared. The life she'd made possible. The family of two who were worth more than the family of many who'd thrown us away. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number that had to be Stephanie, please. I'm begging you. My kids don't deserve to suffer for what we did. I thought about responding. About explaining that kids don't deserve to suffer for what their parents do. I would know. But instead, I turned off my phone and went to help Emma explore her new home. Later that night, after Emma had fallen asleep in her new princess bed in her new pink room, I sat by the 12-foot tree with a cup of tea. The house was quiet except for the settling of old wood and new dreams. I pulled out Grandma's letter and read it again. The courage to remain kind when the world is cruel. Tomorrow, I'd figure out what to do with $47 million. Tomorrow, I'd decide about my family and forgiveness and the future. Tomorrow, I'd start the overwhelming process of becoming someone who wasn't defined by other people's disappointment. But tonight, I just sat in the glow of Christmas lights in a house built by love and vindication, knowing that sometimes the best revenge isn't proving them wrong, it's proving yourself right. Outside, snow began to fall, covering all of Denver in a blanket of white. From upstairs, I heard Emma talking in her sleep, something about fairy houses and angel grandmas. I smiled, thinking about Grandma Eleanor, who'd spent her last months not just changing her will but changing our lives. Thank you, I whispered to the empty room that wasn't empty at all. It was full of possibility, of redemption, of the kind of love that writes people back into stories they'd been erased from. My phone, still silenced, lit up with another message, then another. The family that had exiled me was now desperate to return. But I'd learned something important from Grandma Eleanor. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to let people back in who pushed you out. I was done being their shame, their scandal, their cautionary tale. Now I was an heiress, a mother, a woman who'd survived their worst and inherited the best. The money was nice, life-changing, earth-shattering, problem-solving nice. But the real inheritance was simpler, the knowledge that I'd been worthy all along. Emma had been right that morning. That felt like a lifetime ago. Our tree, the Charlie Brown branch with paper ornaments, had been prettier than theirs because it had love on it. Now we had both, a tree that touched the ceiling and love that filled every room. And somewhere in whatever came after this life, Eleanor Foster was smiling, knowing she'd given her great-granddaughter the only Christmas present that really mattered, a chance to Grow up knowing she was chosen, cherished, and never ever a disappointment. The best revenge wasn't served cold, it was served at exactly the right temperature. In a warm house on Christmas Eve, with snow falling and a little girl dreaming upstairs of dollhouses. And grandmothers who saw the truth through all the lies. They say you can't choose your family. Grandma Eleanor proved them wrong. She chose me, and that choice changed everything.